A very good evening to all our viewers on Globespan 24/7 as we bring you our Monday night program from New York, Guyana, and around the world. We want to thank Nohar Singh for making this platform available, and of course, Devin Bisu, our technical specialist. We also want to acknowledge I know yesterday, the Muslims in Guyana celebrated Yawm Nabi.
Yes.
So we want to extend to all our Muslim brothers and sisters in Guyana and around the world. And of course, our guest tonight is also a Muslim, a practicing Muslim.
Yes.
And we also want to wish you Yawm Nabi, Professor
Thank
Shamir
you.
Ali.
Thank you, Professor Charles.
So we want to thank you and welcome you. As you know, in New York, it's getting darker now in the Northeast. And I guess all around the Eastern Seaboard, because the time is now changing. We're into the fall season. And maybe in another couple of weeks, I see the bill is still in Congress that they might turn the clock back. They might leave it as is. We don't know yet. So we'll wait and see what the final decision will be. So again, welcome to all of you. And Professor Ambassador Shamir, welcome to the program tonight.
Namaste, greetings, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, and Yawm Nabi greetings to all my brothers and sisters in Guyana and globally. Professor Dr. Euclid, special thanks to you and Professor Charles for the invitation to be present here this evening, and especially your sterling contributions for holding these programs week after week. Special commendation. Highest commendation to owner Nohar Singh for his stick-to-itiveness in these Mondays and Wednesdays program, plus all other supporting programs. And also the technician Devin for his constant work to ensure these programs run smoothly. And of course, all our sponsors, collectively, we thank you for your support in getting this information to Guyana. It was my joy and delight and honor to serve Guyana 4 years as ambassador in Kuwait. I had a year-to-year contract starting from August the 1st, 2016, and ended on
Ambassador Shamir, we'll come into that in a minute if you don't mind. We'll come into the details.
Okay.
So your initial welcome statement sound like a true professional ambassador. And we look forward to having you in the next hour and a half or so to talk about your experience as being Guyana's ambassador in the Middle East here. Dr. Rose, my co-host, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Charles, and thank you for being our guest, Ambassador Dr. Shamir. And to all our listeners, thank you for listening.
Ambassador, you were a supporter, and I'm not sure where you are now, of the Alliance for Change, which became part of the coalition. And because of the successful entry in the government in 2015, you were appointed ambassador, Guyana's ambassador to the Middle East. What are some of the countries that you were ambassador for to represent Guyana?
I was not an ambassador to any country before. I was a political appointee in 2016.
Well, which countries were you ambassador to?
To Kuwait, accredited only to Kuwait.
And did you service countries in the surrounding communities?
I had developed, yes, strong personal relationships with Qatar, with Saudi Arabia, with Bahrain, Oman, and 102 ambassadors. For that matter, I was closer to Qatar royal family since 2003, via when I was serving at George Washington University. I was the external examiner for the Doctor of Education, and one of the persons from Qatar, I did not know he was a ruling family until I visited Doha. He never said he was a royal family. I just know he is Mohammed from Qatar, and that was it. And I helped him along the way. My wife was doing her doctorate at the same time, so she was also in the program, and I developed strong personal relationship. So when the coalition won, I thought with that connection, I'll be able to do a lot for Guyana because of the Qatar relationship with the ruling families. And I've made visits as visitors, their VIP visitor, but Guyana did not have an embassy in Qatar. It had a non-resident ambassador from Kuwait, so I was sent to Kuwait.
Excellent. And
I
when
was
you were going
also
on talking about
told,
your,
I was also told that there's no agreement in the accord for a member of the AFC to be an ambassador. And so there was some strong representation from the AFC leadership. And so I was the only member of the AFC that was a political appointee.
I know you mentioned you were talking about your contract as ambassador, and you were saying it was initially 3 years and then it was cut back to year by year. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, I did get a 3-year contract from August the 1st, 2016 for 3 years, signed by His Excellency the Minister Carl Barrington Greenwich. My wife, who was with Merck, 25 years as a global international marketing director, launching Fosamax Plus and Fosamax Emend for cancer and cancitis, resigned and followed me to Kuwait for 3 years. Whilst in Kuwait, we learned that Ambassador Greenwich didn't have the authority to sign the contract. And so the contract had to be signed by the Director General, and it became year to year. From August the 1st, 2016 to July the 31st, 2016, and year to year, we waited, and that's it. We lasted 4 years.
Oh, so it was, and did you resign at the end of the year, or did you?
My contract ended on 31st, and that was the end of the contract. I had no other contract. Normally, they'll tell you in June, July, a new contract. I did not get anything, no. So the contract ended, and that was it. I got a letter from the Minister Cummings that the contract ended, and that was it. So.
And what year was that?
It was in 2020. On July the 23rd, I received her letter. It was on a Thursday. I remembered it well. It was on a Thursday, was the Eid, and in Kuwait, Eid is for 5 days. So there was a total shutdown plus COVID. So I got a letter from the Minister Cummings on the 23rd of July that my contract ended on the 31st of July. So I slept it off, and I was entertaining that night. The royal families were coming to the residence, and I maintained my spirit and continued with it, slept it off. Then on Friday morning, mobilized the entire staff of the embassy to assist me to pack, because I have now 7 days to leave Kuwait. And I gave the staff, because you couldn't find employees who were available to work on an Eid holiday in the Middle East. So the staff worked at double time. My confidential secretary managed the operation. By the time the working day, the shipper was able to come. It was not easy to get a return trip out of Kuwait back to North Carolina, where I left to serve Kuwait. So it was a hassle, but we were able to do. And August the 10th was the day I physically was able to depart the airport. I was able to make a few courtesy calls at the end, and that was it.
Okay, Ambassador Shamir, so you were there on the election of March of 2020. You were the ambassador in Kuwait at that time.
Yes.
As an ambassador of the country, were you allowed to talk on political matters back home?
No, we were given, for that matter, I have 10 members of the PPP are in my iPhone personal contact to reach out to me for a statement. But we were advised by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that we are professional employees and we're not allowed to make any statements.
So you couldn't make no statement on a personal...
Whilst being an employee, yes, couldn't.
Okay, so you couldn't say that, but I want to ask you tonight, Ambassador Shamir, was the election of March 2020 rigged by the PPP?
Based on all the information I have, and I have no direct information, if the observers who are there, they say the election is okay, who am I to judge those renowned, experienced observers? Forgetting the party politics, it's only common sense. When you're a business person, you have the facts, the observers are there, and the system said that the election was lost. Minister Gaskin did announce that, and he's right on the scene, but I wish, looking back, I wished I had the chutzpah, like my Jewish brothers in New York would say, to have resigned and then make a statement. But I
was coming to that question to you.
That could have
if
been
you
an
knew
option.
that the election was properly run, and GCOM, it's not a PP run the election, it was GCOM.
That's
so
correct.
if you knew then that based on the statement of polls that was available, and then with international community and all the poll watchers, why didn't you resign at that time and make a statement publicly?
Looking back, it's one of the regrets.
Okay. I know, Ambassador, before I move on, sorry. So you firmly believe that President Ali is the legitimate president of Guyana, elected
Based
president?
on all the results, yes.
Good.
And the Constitution does provide for courses via the courts. That will take its course, which is part of the Guyana process. And yes, he is the president. Yes.
Okay. I know before you were appointed Ambassador Shamir, we had a lot of discussion in the AFC with you, and you had some grand ideas of what the Middle East can do for Guyana. Were you able to forge any economic gain or conduit? Were you able to provide that conduit between Guyana and the Middle East in terms of what Guyana can benefit from the Middle East and what the Middle East can benefit from Guyana? And if so, what were they?
Yes, you're correct. The AFC Action Plan 2011 sets it all out with Guyana to become the Singapore of the Americas. I did not get the full support from the ministry because it did not appear that that was part of their strategic plan for the Middle East. Yes, that was my personal desire on the transformation. So I didn't have the wholehearted support from Takuba House. Yes, I was able to get Kuwait to give a debt write-off of 61 million, a 2 million grant for roads and other support. But this Minister Winston DaCosta Jordan, who asked me to serve as the first alternate governor at the Islamic Development Bank. He was serving as the first governor. He asked me to serve, and he gave me full authority to develop and maintain relationship with the Islamic Development Bank. That is how you're able to receive 900 million US dollars in credit and grant for the years 2018 to 2022. One of the key requirements of Islamic Development Bank is for feasibility studies. And they were very expensive. The government was not able to provide them. So we only used about 50 million of the credit line. And we got grants from Malaysia for the rice. We got halal meats production from Suriname, assistances for tourism, and assistances for the old people's home. So those were the kind of assistance I was able to get. Dr. Ismail, who was the first ambassador to Kuwait, he served in Washington. I met him a couple of times. He served in Venezuela. He was a non-resident ambassador to Qatar, but I never was given that non-resident. And Qataris, the ruling family, visited the Guyana embassy. They borrow ideas from the Guyana embassy, what they see in show, tell, and know for their embassies, but they needed accreditation, and for one reason or another, I never received that accreditation. I was trying to get help from the Qatar Foundation for Guyana for the University of Guyana. I promised the University of Guyana aid from Qatar. They were ready, but I had no accreditation, so could not discuss anything. I made personal trip to Qatar Stock Exchange and promoted Guyana, to the Kuwait University, the graduate student and promote Guyana and investment, and I made private visits to Qatar. I'm still in touch with Qatar as of today, this morning, on private relationships.
Yes, Ambassador Shamir. Welcome again to the program.
Thank you.
Now, before you became ambassador in 2016, I know you did a lot of stuff. Give us a brief history of your background, what you did.
In the U.S. or in Guyana?
In the U.S. What
Well,
you did actually.
I arrived in 1979 in Guyana to pursue my education. I was able...
You mean in the U.S.?
In the U.S., yes. March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, 1979. I arrived at $500. That's all His Excellency Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham allowed me to get. And I came on the St. Patrick's Day, and I went to secure, I had the international accounting degree, and I was in the diploma program at the University of Guyana. I only got 60 credits for a bachelor's program. And I had to go and do a bachelor's program at Adelphi University in Garden City, completed my bachelor's with distinction in accounting and marketing, went on to do the MBA in accounting and marketing, and went on to do my PhD in management. On my work life, I was Chief Financial Officer, VP Finance for American Stock Exchange, New York Stock Exchange, and NASDAQ companies in New York and Pennsylvania, in electronics primarily. I was in the fashion world at Fifth Avenue, 650 Fifth Avenue, Italian and French fashion, couture, and ready to wear. That was a different world altogether. And also I was an IRS inspector in Brooklyn for a while, all part of my experiences. And I taught at Adelphi University in New York in accounting, and we moved to Pennsylvania. I taught MBA classes at DeSales University, managerial accounting, financial accounting, and international accounting. And at East Stratford University, bachelor's degree, accounting, finance, costing, and at Lehigh College, the same. Then I came to, also whilst I was in Pennsylvania, George Washington University asked me to be their external examiners for the Doctor of Education program. And I got particularly the business subjects. Any EDD candidate that was a business subject, I was the external examiner. And according to GW, for each doctoral candidate, there must be one external examiner who had the authority to pass or fail the candidate.
Yeah, I know about that. Ambassador Shamir,
then I came to North Carolina, and I served in the city government and every committee excepting the police. And I was a notary public in North Carolina. And then I went on to Kuwait. That sums it up.
When I grew up, I want to be like you.
All praise to Almighty.
Ambassador, foreign policy. A lot of our listeners might not know what foreign policy is, but it is very important for every country to have a robust foreign policy because that promotes the image of a country. Can you explain to our listeners what is foreign policy and its real importance? And why it is important as well for countries like Guyana to have diplomatic relationship with at least every region of the world.
Diplomats represent nations, and their primary task is to work with the foreign countries to solidify agreements that can aid social, economic development for the countries. To the best of my knowledge, Guyana has a foreign policy that is non-aligned, friends to all, but they have been especially close to the UK and the USA. I know Guyana's policy has been to strongly support CARICOM and CARICOM policies and decision-making. They have been also working together with the UN and the OAS. Since 1966, Guyana played an influential role with the third world countries and the non-alignment countries, which caused Guyana to serve with the UN Security Council in the period 1975 to 76, and again 82 to 83. So the policy is very, very important, and it has to be set by the nation. With all due respect, I think Guyana problem is a constant change of government. Continuity do not follow. And I'm certain we are suffer and have suffered as a result. Recently, I heard the President Ali, His Excellency, announced Guyana is seeking non-permanent seat at the UN. Guyana has a very, very robust performance in the international scene. We had Attorney General and Deputy Prime Minister, Dr. Mohammed Shahabudin. He served 9 years on the International Courts of Justice. Guyana foreign policy can be possibly described based on the amount of overseas missions it has. Barbados, Belgium, Brazil, Canada, China, Cuba, India, Kuwait, recently Qatar, South Africa, Suriname, Switzerland, Trinidad and Tobago, United Nations, United Kingdom, USA, and Venezuela. Georgetown is privileged to have the offices of the European Union and the International Development Bank and the UNDP and the WHO and OAS. Those are all extension of the Guyana foreign policy, I suspect. I think the biggest achievement was when Guyana, who has diplomatic relations with the G77, when Guyana served as chair in 2020. G77 is a group of the United Nations with 77 countries which started that group. It is now 134, and they promote members' interest. So those are some of the foreign policy, and we've had some powerful, very, very powerful individuals who have made sterling contributions. Guyana is also a member of the Islamic Development Bank in Jeddah. We're the 57th member country, and there's a long list, I'm told, on powerful nations waiting to join. I pleaded in back channels to allow every 2 years at least one new nation, with no result. Guyana, as a result of being in the Islamic Development Bank, also became a member of the Organization of Islamic Countries. That is also based on Jeddah, KSA. With the limited knowledge that I have, I think the wisdom of 6 patriots from Guyana, starting with His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Shahabudin, His Excellency Dr. Sridhar Ramphal, His Excellency Dr. Rashley Jackson, His Excellency Cedric Joseph, His Excellency Dr. Rudy Insinali, and His Excellency Carl Greenidge, has been the guiding force in the foreign policy of Guyana in 1966. There is very few publication that I've seen that has varied from being a non-alignment nation and friends to all. But
okay, go ahead.
But now, in my humble opinion, it is very, very, very important for Guyana to be cognizant of the geopolitical alliances, especially with OPEC, Venezuela and Iran, USA, Europe, Asia, Asian countries, the African Union, and the Gulf countries, Kuwait, Qatar, UAE, and KSA. Venezuela, I happened to meet His Excellency President Maduro in Astana. We had a long conversation after he saw how I was interfacing with Kuwait, Qatar, and the Saudi, and the Oman, and the Bahrain embassies. They all hugged me as brothers. When I spoke to him, he wanted to know why they were so close to me. I said, you have to ask them, but you know, they're my brothers. We had a long conversation with His Excellency Maduro. And Guyana can make progress, but with all due respect, Venezuela is active at Islamic Bank. They're active at OSCE. They turn up. President Maduro turn up. The ambassador turn up. They're not a no-show. They are a present. Even in Kuwait, they are present. Maduro went to Kuwait. They went to Qatar. So he's making personal relationships contact, which is money in the bank in the Arab world. We in the Western world are accustomed, you have a proposal, an agreement, and you sit in to discuss. The Arab world, completely different. Any ambassador in that world has to go relearn and unlearn. There is sabar, patience, relationship first, and then respect. I talked about getting the 61 million write-off. Do you know Guyana could not even get a meeting in Kuwait to discuss it? Because officially what you do, you send a note verbal and you wait for a response. Response never comes. I had a call from Guyana that they were trying to get this debt write-off and they were getting no response. And I said, okay, no. And I took charge of it. I sent my note verbal. And after 1 week, I turned up at the embassy, at the Foreign Affairs, and started the discussions. But nothing was happening. So I was lucky to have the Dean of Senegal, who has been serving for 30 years. He guided me on the Arabic culture. So I went to the mosque as a Muslim. You go to the mosque, the Amir is in the middle. On the right-hand side, all the ministers and the royal family. On the left-hand side from the Dean and the ambassadors as they turn up. I always was the first to attend, half an hour early and do extra salah. So when the Dean arrives, he is there. Who's next to the Dean? You can guess, Guyana. At occasion, Egypt will come and try to bounce me off, and then the Dean will give him a look. So as a result of that, I developed the personal relationships. Has nothing to do with the job as the ambassador. And from that, 6 times I went and had tea and dates with His Highness. The Dean warned me, do not speak until you're asked the question. So I listened to him. The 7th time His Highness says, what can we do for you? And that is when I asked for 100% loan write-off. And eventually got 66 2/3 because they will create a precedent if they do 100%. So in that environment is relationships building. If you not believe the relationships, all the sound and fury will signify nothing. You have to build, they have to win their trust and let them reach out to you. If you wait on the official stuff, it doesn't happen. It's the informal gathering that you're invited. You'll get the official invitations in Kuwait and in the Middle East. Then you have the informal invitation by a phone call or a WhatsApp. Then His Highness the Emir, personal assistant, will advise you to come to the palace to meet His Highness. They never tell you who, what, when, where, how. You're just going to the palace. And all you ask, 1 or 2, said 2. You turn up. When you turn up with the flag, in the protocol in Kuwait, as long as you're ambassador and you're accredited, your flag vehicle must have the flag flying. If you're not accredited, the flag cannot fly. So I turned up at the palace with the flag. My chauffeur is quietly told, unfurl the flag. Right away, I knew that this was going to be a different meeting. So this is the kind of a culture that's operative in that world. And that was the kind of a meeting that get the loan. And that was where His Highness wanted to have a Kuwait embassy in Guyana. If Guyana can provide the land. And it's in my report. Each month, my report was 30 or 40 pages comprehensively. So the details are all there, but many times they didn't get the desired action. So the culture in the Arab world is one of relationships first. If relationships are not built, the rest do not follow.
Okay. Now, before I ask you the next question, let me say this to our audience. A few years ago, a Russian diplomat in Washington, D.C. was driving impaired, drunk, and he killed someone. And he was spearheaded back to Russia. Then that followed about 6 months after, a diplomat from Kenya raped a woman, and he was sent back to Kenya too. The question is, when you're a diplomat, you have what is called diplomatic immunity. So, Professor Shamir, I want you to explain to our audience what is diplomatic immunity, and the real question is, what is diplomatic immunity as it pertains to individuals? Who receives it and at what level?
Ambassadors who are accredited, charge d'affaires, and first secretary are normally citizens of nations. The ambassador is the one who is accredited. The supporting staff can be the charge d'affaires, who is also the first secretary. They are also considered diplomat, and they hold a diplomatic passport from the represented country. They have immunity on almost everything. That is the law, the global law, right or wrong, their law. In extenuating circumstances, the nation from which that person who has done something very, very badly will take away their immunity. But that is very, very, very rare. The last case was in Britain. A lady killed some persons. Within 24 hours, the lady was back out of the UK. So they do have that full immunity. Unless the country itself who sent them withdraws it, they have full immunity. That's the protocol.
Okay, so diplomatic immunity for audience, that when you are accredited to a foreign country, you cannot be charged for any crimes you committed. This is why in New York, we have diplomats parking any place, receive tickets after tickets. They don't pay a dime in tickets. The United States government has to pay the city for those tickets. So diplomatic immunity comes with that type of prestige. Now, before I let my colleague comes in, I want to ask you this question here. Kuwait is a tiny country in the Middle East. It's a speck with a population of about 4 million, 4.5 million people, I should say, with foreigners and so forth. And it's just about 7,000 square miles, which is less than Berbice. Now, do you think it would be better if we had an embassy in Dubai or Saudi Arabia, one of those larger states, so that our presence can be felt in the region more and be more effective?
I do have 7 recommendations, and the first one of the 7 is an ambassador in Riyadh. Yes, especially with a recent oil wealth and all the geopolitical situation. The decision has already been made. We have an embassy now in Qatar. There is a charge d'affaires in Kuwait, and Riyadh will be my recommendation. Depending on the government trust in businesses, they can then determine whether they can, but I know UAE was working with me trying to get an embassy, an ambassador also in, and they were prepared to offer assistances, but I was not involved in those negotiations with UAE. That was being done at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I did negotiate with the UAE for Guyana's attendance at the World Fair, for official delegation, and the booths and the living and accommodation for the entire official delegation. I did work on that for UAE.
Charles, over to you.
Ambassador Shamir, listening to you, I am very impressed with what you did in your stint there, even though, as you said, the coalition did not fully endorse the AFC plan. What the Middle East could have given to Guyana and what Guyana could have given to the Middle East. A symbiotic relationship where both of these nations benefit. Were you, when you left the ambassadorship, who replaced you?
No one replaced me. They charged the affairs who was there. Their first secretary, he became charged of affairs. And that same person was there. He was hired by President Jagdeo, who sent him when Dr. Ishmael departed for health reason in 2014. He was there before I arrived, and after I arrived, he held the fourth, and then he was an FSO1 during the period I was in Kuwait, Foreign Officer 1. Yes.
Just explain what FSO means, Foreign Service
Foreign
Officer.
Service Officer Grade 1. Right. And his services were not too well, and I documented it. His name went promotion. I learned 2 times, and I left him still at FSO 1. Recently, last year, he was FSO 3. He became FSO 1 and went as ambassador to Qatar. These are the facts. A thorough researcher will find these facts out. So,
would you mind to say who the person is?
No, the Foreign Service, it's tough to call names. No.
Okay, no problem. Yeah. But Ambassador, did you reach out to the PPP? I know President Ali made quite a bit of visit to the Middle East, and we had a lot of visit from Middle Eastern nations to Guyana. Did you reach out to President Ali or his government after you left office?
I reached out to President after I got my termination letter. I know that was it. I reached out to President Ali 3 times. President Jagdeo, Vice President, 3 times. Minister Todd, 3 times. And in my rule, 3 times I stopped. I was asked by the ruling family in Kuwait, in Qatar, in Kuwait as of today, and in Saudi Arabia, did you offer advice to the government? I said, yes, I tried 3 times. One time I picked the phone up and called one of the 10 PPP high officials in my phone and explained that something was not going wrong for Guyana's image in Kuwait. It was very disturbing. That person said he was too busy. I said, I'll call you tomorrow. He said he's busy tomorrow and the boys have it all under control. So I tried. I can only try. No, they've not asked me, but quietly others, the Saudis are asking me, the Kuwaitis are asking me, the Qataris are asking me, the Emiratis are asking me on a private basis my opinion. And I have to be transparent because it's only, you can't lie to God. My advice is if Guyana can show you one project that they have successfully done from start to finish, on time, and on budget, follow them. What does a management by objective teacher and a professor in America, if you cannot have successful projects, when you do your due diligences, you find all the failures. So my advice to them, ask Guyana to give you that, and then you make the decision. As of today, I'm told that they're doing due diligences. All the promises and announcement in the press is being looked at. Nothing is concrete. I have seen in Kuwait, they walked away with losing $1 billion in an investment because they were not satisfied. So it's not the starting of it, it's the continuation. So yes, there is not a lot of statements. I will not say in the TV program what I know behind the scenes in my back channels, but I'm fully aware of the other side. Even the Islamic Development Bank, as of this morning, they are a little bit disturbed. They are happy. The senior minister of finance was the governor, Winston Jordan. They had alternate governor, the ambassador. We now have representing the governor is past President Jagdeo. It's saying vice president. By anybody will believe that means you're the first vice president. Guyana Constitution, the prime minister is the first vice president. So he really is the second vice president. I'm asked, how come there's no substantive minister of finance from Guyana? There's a minister in the office of the president. So I said, what can I tell you? You have to ask them. So a back channels, they found out that that Dr. Ashley Singh was charged in courts and all the cases and before everything else. And so they got the believers. So the question I'm being asked, what is there to hide? Why don't you have? Next thing they ask, why doesn't the governor from Guyana turn up at the annual meetings like you and the minister turned up? He said, you have to ask them. I do not know. It seems as if the governor of the bank, of the Islamic Development Bank, has missed both annual meetings.
So, Ambassador, what I'm gathering from you, and I hope I'm wrong, is that all these public showcase, if that's the right thing to use, is not likely to bear fruit because, as you said, the people in the Middle East, their culture is to get things done. They have a master plan, they work with budget, they work with time, they get things implemented, get things done. And you're saying that if Guyana cannot comply with that, it's really throwing water on ducks back. Is that a reasonable statement?
With all due respect, yes. With all due respect, from the best of my knowledge, yes. Don't forget, these people are very rich. They have experienced officers. They do due diligence thorough. In the case of Kuwait, every officer in Kuwait told His Highness not to give that right off to Guyana because Guyana had a bad reputation. They do not respond. His Highness overruled. And those are the kind of things happen. The professional people will do their thorough due diligence because that's their job. They're being recognized and rewarded based on their efficiency. So you can't cut the ice and drop the teeth. Islamic Development Bank is a little bit disturbed, but Guyana is a sovereign nation. Guyana sends, but is the talk of the board, and I'm hearing it. And, I cannot, I hope they will listen and correct it. Correct it and what I found out in Kuwait, the 6 GCC ambassadors, when they meet at reception, they all share notes. So if one know X, they meet tomorrow, all 6 know 6, so they share. They have paid prices of one playing the other in the past, so they share notes.
So we are really in.
And let me be honest with you. I'm not here to tear down anybody.
Yeah.
My job is to build up, but I cannot also lie. And hopefully we can correct things when they're not right.
Our program, Professor Shamir,
yes.
Our program is to give information, and if the government wants to listen, we have invited a lot of government officials, and they declined to come because they think we're anti-government. I don't know why we consider anti-government, because we want the government to succeed. We want President Ali to succeed. And
Amen.
what you're telling us tonight, Ambassador, is that I don't see that happening.
Well, you've heard the announcements and you see what has come. The only thing has come in the Islamic Development Bank loan. Nothing else has come. It's going to take a lot more time. It's a lot more time. They're doing their due diligence. I'm told they're sending their private persons incognito coming in. They have contacts in Texas in the oil industry is coming in from a Texan passport. So it's not only the passport, they're securing their due diligences because there's a lot of money involved in investments. They are interested in Guyana, but I was asked by one of the GCC, is Qatar a candidate like Sri Lanka? I says, why are you asking me that? I says, you are my brother. I need you to answer me straight. I perspired. It was a tough question, but I learned at the IRS, when you ask a question of the taxpayer, I already had all the answers in front of me. When I asked him how many bank accounts, he said 2. I know he has 6. So whenever the Gulf leaders ask me that, I always remember my IRS in the New York experiences. So I told them, asked them, what are the experiences of Sri Lanka? It says corruption, friends, families, and favorites. Does Guyana have those? They found it in the newspapers. They told me the article. So it says, Your Excellency, Your Highness, why are you asking me? So we're coming to you, you're a brother, you will tell us the truth, because if not, Allah will not forgive you. He said, you have the answer. I cannot disagree with what those have written. They've read Dr. Anand Gulsaran article and all the projects that have failed. They told me, he says, how you know that? I said, they do the research. See, information is so free. We got to realize that people are aware. They said, Dr. Anand Gulsaran, incredible. So with all that kind, personally, I hope I'm quietly doing all I can to support, but I cannot ask them to do what's not in their method of doing things. It's sticky wicket, if I can say anything. Sticky
Professor
wicket.
Shamir, what you're telling me, I'm very fearful now. I really did not know all these details you're talking about, and it's new information. I hope our listeners, they're also listening. I've been reading some of the chat on Facebook, and we are more concerned with racial problem in Guyana, this race issue with Black and Indian, rather than policies. And I think we are, you know, it's sad. But what, before I get into that question, Ambassador Shamir, when you were ambassador there, the oil contract was signed before or after you left, you took up the position of ambassador?
I did not know anything about it. That was not brought to our attention. I did not know. All we had is information in the media.
Because being in that part of the world, when they had oil for hundreds of years, they know exactly how contracts in that industry should be. And I was told reliably that there were 4 persons in Guyana who was really in charge of the contract, which was the president, the Minister of Energy, the Foreign Minister, and an advisor to the president. So the 4 of them, so the Foreign Minister of whom you were reporting to was an integral part of that. They never reached out to you as ambassador there to get an input?
No, and in my report are very extensive. Kuwait, I had personal relationship with the Minister of Oil. He was my brother. He offered to help Guyana whatever we needed. It's in my monthly reports directly to the Foreign Affairs. Kuwait offered scholarships to train, no response. Brunei, scholarship, no response. And these has been no response. Kuwait was ready, Qatar was ready, all personal relationships. I used them to get there ready, but unless Foreign Affairs make the next move, I'm accredited only to Kuwait. So I had limitation. I had scholarships out of Malawi for agriculture, Malaysia, from Turkey, from Libya, from Iran, personal relationships. But the next step has to be Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and it went into the report. Now that I'm off, I'm told other persons who visited other countries had similar experiences of offers. It went to Foreign Affairs and nothing happened. So I cannot tell you more. The offers from me on my reports was there from Kuwait. I did not know what they need, but Kuwait says whatever you need. My closest of all, except in the royal family, was the sheikh in charge of all the oil. When he had his birthday, his 50th birthday, the only guests were Shamir and Marianne. And he was where all the oil personal relationship was available for anything Guyana wanted. But if there's no move from the Foreign Affairs, nothing happened. I'm in touch with them privately these days. They're watching on.
I don't know what to say, Professor Shabir. What you're telling us tonight, it's very, very scary. And I don't know, do you know if this government, the current government, is taking up any of those recommendations that you would have submitted to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs?
I do not know. I've not seen, and I did an end of term report, even more comprehensive. And to give an example, Kuwait made the Embassy Guyana made a high reputation with a recycle program. It was discontinued after I left. The ambassadors, when they visited the embassy, there was a red carpet treatment, the name and sign, the national anthems, and they had a web page in Guyana website. There were 234 pages. So 8 ambassadors had it. When I left, all cleared. This all affecting Guyana image. This tearing down after one government as another is the people are suffering. This is what, and the Kuwaitis are watching, they're talking, and they talk among themselves.
Ambassador Shamir, before Dr. Rose come on, give me your honest opinion on how effective was the coalition government in governing our country?
I'm a professor and I give grades, and with all due respect, I can give a barely passing grade. From all that I know, I even happen to know now that there were plans for the sugar estates, and that minister who sent that plan in, workable, was told, halt and wait. Says, oh my God. There's no more I can say. I don't, I believe in empirical evidence, so I support. There's one case where a minister told me he had a plan, detailed plan for sugar estates. One other person out of Florida had a plan for DDL to be marketed. He took the plan directly to the leadership of the coalition. Nothing happened. And that plan was to make sugar packaging, DDL to take over part of the estate. Sugar was going to be packaged and marketed as an organic product at a high end. I saw the proposal now. It was given. So I have to say, with all due respect, they did the very best. Maybe right hand and left hand not in the same boat. I understand that, so I really can give them a barely passing grade. There was so much information and skills they had. If they only listened to the AFC Action Plan 2011 and marry that into the work and execute stuff, it would have been a different Guyana, completely different.
But we know that didn't happen. Ambassador Ali, why didn't the AFC walk away from the coalition when their policies were not being implemented?
They hoped that every day would have been different. And the AFC had discussions, I'm told. I was not in the management committee, but I'm told they talked and there were pros and cons. And I know it was Camarade Ramchatan who took the decision to join the coalition and the hope for a better Guyana, which he was hoping for since his days at the PPP. What has happened, I cannot answer because, I'm not privileged to that kind of information.
I know it's very early, only 2 years in President Ali's administration, but how would you grade President Ali's administration for the last 2 years?
He is very active. In my speech, I always use res non verba, deeds, not words. I hear a lot of words. I say sound and fury signifying nothing, but the action, each one I can find holes in them, but perfection is a mirage. He's making a good freight effort. He's working all the corridors, but especially when you talk to Saudi and tell them you have to have a branch here and 2 million, you don't do things like that. You don't dress like a Saudi and imitate them. No, be yourself, be you. When you do that, they think you're just make-believe. They find a hole in those personalities. Minister Jubair, I know him when he was Public Relations Secretary for the Saudi Embassy in Washington. He is in my iPhone. We're personally in touch. MBS, I'm in touch. I met His Majesty. I have relationships as a personal level because of Kuwait connection, Kuwait recommendation, because Guyana was loved in Kuwait. I achieved what I did because assisted my wife and the personal connections. They tell each other and it helped. Not to boast, but just to explain. Marianne is the only wife ever went to the Saudi ambassador residence with myself and her. Never done. They adopted her as their daughter. So all for Guyana betterment, Guyana help. It was all, but the team in Guyana did not see stuff. So I write the reports, but some things you can't write everything.
Ambassador, I'm taken back by your comment when the president had the Saudi outfit in Uzbek. You think the Saudis think that was a mockery to them?
Yes, I heard it. And Kuwait thinks a mockery right now, and I'll tell you why. Yes, and the person who came, he's not, you see, Guyana has to be smart. Our leaders have to be, you got to be book smart and street smarts. They do all the research. We imagine when the person who come, he was a newly hired member on the Saudi Arabia team. He is less than a year. So he doesn't have all that rank and privilege. And his job is to went to the Caribbean conference to get investments into the Saudi Arabia. So he didn't have the authority to do all the other stuff. So yes, it was frowned on. I heard from Qatar, I heard from Kuwait, I heard Saudi Arabia. They did not do too kindly and found fault. They said, he made a good freight effort, give him a passing grade. Because he's my president, I have to plead. But they were not pleased. I cannot lie, I will not lie. It says Yawna Bide.
Who would advise the president to put on a garment then?
I do not know. He doesn't talk to me. I can tell you what's happening in Kuwait last week. 5 emails and phone call. What happened to Guyana and Kuwait? I said, I don't know. I haven't heard. Kuwait is a conservative country. It's an Islamic country. Yes, it's pro-Western, but it has religious values. Guyana sent a charge d'affaires, to the best of my knowledge, a lady with a short, attended Nepal reception, 50 years Nepal celebration, arms out above the knee. Now, Kuwait is an Islamic nation. You have to dress in a better form. So Kuwait asked, after Dr. Marianne and you left, what has Guyana become? I said, well, they're a new kid on the block, different folks, different strokes. This is happening right now last week. And they're not pleased, they're going through the motion. See, in the Arab world, they go through the motion. They go through the motion, but in substance, the rest don't come. When the access don't come, your projects don't come, then you realize you're not getting anywhere. So we made a very, very bad mistake to send, not only you send a person, but by virtue of her dressing that way, is not getting the attention. Immediately, I got a picture. It says, I don't know, they didn't consult me, but they should be smart. Dr. Jagdeo knows better. He sent the first ambassador to Kuwait was Dr. Ishmael, and he knows the culture, they know him. But when I met His Highness, they asked me, what about the airlines? I said, what airlines? The expression in His Highness' face would have cut me dead. I said, there's no airline. He said, yes. President Jagdeo and the envoy from Greece, Halak, who said, they're not around, but I don't know, there's no airline. And you know, in the Arab world, you have to read facial expression. You have to read body language, which professors have to do. And that was not a pleasant. That's one of the most embarrassing I had 7 embarrassing moments. That was one of the most embarrassing moments of the 7 in my stay in Kuwait, when His Highness asked about the Guyana Airlines, what his body language meant, his expression, no knowledge, but it was not nice. I can tell you that. And I wasn't around.
Professor or Ambassador Shamir, tell me, I hope the Ministry of Foreign Affairs are listening. I hope they reduce their ego and probably contact you to help frame policies for the Middle East, because you seem to be an expert in that region and nobody can take that away from you. Now, I hope they can reduce their, I hope the Minister Todd is listening. I hope Foreign Secretary Harper, they're listening, because it's no good for you to have people there who do not know what foreign policy is all about or how to carry out a foreign policy. Foreign policy and diplomacy are very important. But let me ask you the question, Dr. Thompson. When you were there, Guyana had a very good relationship, or you promoted Guyana in the Middle East. Very good relationship with a number of countries. What is Guyana relations now with the Middle East? Do you know?
It's a question mark. They want to know what happened after the allies left Kuwait. As Marianne was loved in another circle all by herself. They want to know what happened. What happened? That's the question. Why this? They can't understand it. Whereas we promoted Guyana 24/7 with a show and tell, one flyer, Discover Guyana, show, tell, and know Guyana. There were 200 pictures at the embassy, show, tell, and know Guyana. After I left, all went into a box. Marianne designed a business card, show and tell Guyana, showing Guyana location, because Guyana was being mistaken for Ghana and Guinea when there was no such embassies in Guyana. That's what they thought. So we did all of that. the recycling program. So they want to know what has happened to Guyana now. And what was amazing to Qatar, Qatar royal family visited the embassy. They borrowed the show and tell from the embassy, asked my permission, and said yes to use it. They know they had a page, they had a picture of their visit. They went to the embassy website looking for that picture, they couldn't find it. That's how they reach out to me. And I had to tell him that after I left, the website was taken down. All the pages were taken down, including Qatar. So those are, and these are nothing to hide. I have to tell that, you know, it's a fact. So you ask me the question so you can now make the conclusion. You see, they're going through the motions, but when a real thing happened, like Islamic Development Bank, they were tempted to hold that loan. That loan was supposed to come to March. It went to 3 committees, and after they did the research, it was postponed and postponed and postponed and postponed because of due diligence. Then one final person says, you know, Guyana is a member, 57th member. We have not done much of the 900 million, so let's approve it. But dot the I's and cross the T. That's why if you notice in the statement, it will be the Islamic Bank rules, regulation, process, and procedures. That means quality materials, quality work, percentage of completion. No monies will be paid unless things are done, because they will be doing very, very thoroughly. That gives you an example of how. And if we can pass that test with Islamic Development Bank and the Suez like Linden, that will be a good show and tell for Guyana in the Middle East. Right now, nobody's seeing it. Nobody.
You said you were mystified when they asked you about an airline. What airline they were talking about?
I have no idea. I just got to tell you as I got it. I just said, airline? There's no airline. I have no idea. But all I can read is the expression. He repeated 2 times and it says, no, there's no airline. And it called the 2 names and says, no, there's no airline. There's a Guyana Airways and that went out of business. I didn't ask, and in the world, you don't ask. The dean warned me, you try not to ask, be civil, wait. Not a time to ask, and I was too scared even to ask. But you see, you asked the question and I cannot lie to you. You ask me the question and hopefully somebody will listen and correct the way we're not doing things. My job is to hopefully to make, you know, I have family, I have friends, very powerful friends. I want Guyana to succeed, and hopefully my constructive evaluation, I'm not being critical, I don't want to pull down, but I have to tell, you ask me the straight question. That's the reason all the projects is just like motor and guitar, 2 different brand of music, and that's straight up.
No one wants to pull down this government. Everyone wants to, I think every Guyanese wants to build it, but many are not given the opportunity because party preferences have always taken control of governments, and this is happening in both parties. You will have someone who is highly qualified, but from another party, but they will be bypassed for someone who is far less qualified and can't do the job, but because they're party members. And this is from both parties. I'm not singling out any parties. Now, as ambassador, I want you to put on your professorial cap, like what I always do. Give us a pathway as to how Guyana can establish and develop strong relationship with the Arab world.
Guyana has ambassadors past and present in Guyana and outside of Guyana, a consultative group in different sections of the world who has served there, who have knowledge in theories and in practice, to help them to understand, navigate, and set the right path. You have to go back to basics. Use your past experiences that you have, irrespective of party. Election is over. It's one Guyana. It's Guyana for all. I'll tell you a story. When I was in Kuwait, there's 3 top PPP persons in this iPhone. Reach out to me. One wanted to be United Arab Emirates non-resident ambassador in Guyana. I immediately sent off my recommendation to the highest authorities in UAE for that person. I did not say he's a PPP in a government. I didn't operate like that. I supported his nomination. He's interested to be. Eventually, they did the due diligence and they found things were not, Jewish word, kosher, nothing happened. Another person wanted, when Kuwait approved that 2 million for the road, they wanted 5 million. I approached a Kuwaiti to see if they can improve it to get better quality and better stuff, but I was not successful. Another PPP person reached out to me to get investments for them. So, you know, to say that this party, I did not operate like that. I went there to serve all Guyana, and I did that without fear or favor. It did not matter. But others have different way, and others are listening. All the investors who are coming, even the ones who were there at the last summit, I'm hearing from them left, right, and center of their expression, their opinion. Says I'm not around due to due diligence, where people are reading, they're writing, and information is around.
Professor Shamir, or Ambassador Shamir, I always call you Professor.
Servant leader is better. I like servant leader.
Servant leader then, okay. Now, can you tell our listeners what diplomatic relations we have in the Middle East right now at the ambassadorial level? How many countries?
Right now, only Qatar.
Not Kuwait?
No, you have a charge of affairs, first secretary, the lady. No ambassador. You have an embassy, which Kuwait is subsidizing the embassy. Kuwait subsidized the 3 motor vehicles and 50% of the locally hired staff. There's no ambassador in Kuwait, and Kuwait is not too pleased. They're not too pleased. I have to tell you, they're not too pleased that Guyana didn't have an ambassador after I left. And they sent a charge of affairs, and, you know, I made my comment on that. So they're not pleased. And in that part of the world, there's a little competition among them to have ambassadors rather than non-resident accreditation. Qatar did not like it, but they tolerated it with Dr. Ismail. And they were very disappointed. Almost every month they were sending note verbal, phone call. When I see the ambassador of Qatar, I would some hide, run, because I had no answer, no response from Foreign Affairs. So Guyana had a dead Ambassador Ismail on their records for the years I served in Kuwait. That's the image of Guyana. That's the truth.
Is it true that the countries in the Middle East, the Arab countries, they prefer to have someone like you from a Muslim background or a Muslim?
Yes.
Ambassador to be?
I mean, and not only that, the country who is smart, like we did with Dr. Ismail, they have the edge at the mosque. And when you meet the ruling families and the ministers and everybody at the informal gathering in that culture, it's not like the Western Mall, you go to a meeting, here's a proposal, this change. No, it's completely different. Yes, that's a big plus, big plus. Yes, without hesitation. And I'm sure the past leaders of the current government know that. Dr. Ismail was the first ambassador. The first secretary was from CIOG. He was a Muslim. It's advantageous to the sending country. Let me put it this way. There's nothing against it, but you suffer. That person will not be able to go. And by virtue of charge of affairs, there's heavy in that world. Protocol, position, rank is more thorough than the royal family, believe you me. When you go, the rank is the ambassadors, then the charge of affairs, then the first secretary. And there's there's certain things that are discussed only at the ambassador's level. So if you don't have an ambassador, you're missing out.
The charge of affairs, is she a Muslim?
No.
Okay. In your opinion, can you tell us who you think in Guyana as a Muslim could be the ambassador in Kuwait to represent Guyana truly at all levels?
It's tough for me to know that. I'm not resident in Guyana. I do not understand the politics, but I'm certain if they look, they can find and do better than what they did, with all due respect. With all due respect. With all due respect, they can do better. They can do better. They can do better. They could have done better, but there might be reasons for doing what they do, but missing out. See, by doing what they did, I'm only telling you the reaction and what you will lose. I doubt we're going to get an invitation to be with His Highness at the farm and the chalet. No can do. It's not going to happen.
Dr. Rose, if you don't mind, Dr. Professor, is this, you think, the strategy of the current government by sending a female there, they're playing the gender game? Like, because
whatever it is, I do not know, but in that world, that's not a plus.
Okay, that's one.
That's
Secondly,
not
and I totally agree with you. I was having, the consulate here in Guyana, in New York, was having a program for Emancipation Day. And I made a comment to the Consul General, and I said, it's an African celebration, and we got to be mindful that an African person should chair the program. That doesn't go against any other ethnicity because it's an African program. When you're dealing with the Middle East, like Kuwait and the Emirs and Saudi Arabia and so on, these are conservative Muslim countries.
Yes.
And Guyana have professional Muslims, in my view, who can represent Guyana well in that part of the world. So it's a no-brainer really to send a professional Guyanese. We have Halim Majid. He's also, I think, a practicing Muslim. I'm not sure. But there's you again. There's other Muslims that can go that part of the world and represent, as you said, the mosque is where things happen in that part of the world.
Yes.
And we seem to be losing out.
Yep, you're right. And not only that, they view it as an insult. Kuwait view it as an insult. They won't tell you officially, but the back channels, and I'm getting it, and I'm trying to defend as best as I can. They asked me to get word, and I told them I tried 3 times and not trying again. The one person said, the boys have it all, they know what they want to do. So that's what I was told. When I was told by His Highness to reach out, you don't mess around. So I reach out, pick up the phone, and I call the person. Says, I gotta talk, something is going wrong in Kuwait. Let me talk to you tomorrow. Oh, I'm busy tomorrow. My God, you're 24 hours. How busy can you be? Oh, the boys have it all under control. Well, definitely didn't want to hear whatever I said. You see, that's the know-all attitude. Kuwait view it as an insult, and Qatar knows about it. The entire Gulf knows about it. Everybody heard, all the embassy corps in Guyana know it. They've seen what Guyana had before. They see what Guyana is now.
But Ambassador, we are told, sorry, Dr. Rose, I'm cutting in. We are told you have a really good relation with President Ramutar. Did you reach out to him?
No, I met him a few times, but he's not in my iPhone. If you're not my WhatsApp, nope, I did not. I went the route I talked about, the official route. No.
Okay.
No. And of what surprised me above all, that past President Jagdeo visited that area. He knows it. He's seen it. They asked me about him, and they're wondering how come he's there and they're doing things, and I have no answer. I said, what can I tell you? He had a state visit with the Emir. They all know he's known in Kuwait, in the royal family. They remember his visit, and they want to know he's around. And how come? I said, I do not have the answer. I'm outside looking in. My party is outside looking in. What else can I say? Did they ask you? No, they have it all. They don't need my advice. They look at the reports. They don't even have to talk to me. See the reports.
Look, for the past 55 years, partisan politics have killed Guyana's progress. And I think it's time for us to move away from that and put the best qualified person to do the job, irrespective of that person's ethnicity or
Agreed.
political affiliation.
Agreed.
We cannot move forward. And I support President Ali's One Guyana initiative. But if we are doing the things we are doing present day, then where that One Guyana initiative is going, it should not only be a statement in theory, it has to be practical things handed out, done for people to say, well, yes, we are all an inclusive society. And President and Ambassador Shami, what you're saying here tonight, if Guyanese are not riveted and will say, well, yes, we're supposed to end this partisan race-based politics, then something is wrong with our nation. Something is wrong with our people. I hate to say this. We have got to put this to an end. We cannot allow one, two, or three because they have power to say, well, they're going to do what they feel like with the country. We have seen how these leaders, not in Guyana, but elsewhere, destroyed countries. And like we are sitting down and allowing them to do the same thing. We have got to understand that they've got to put parties and politics aside. You are qualified. You went there. You know all these people. Why can't the Ministry of Foreign Affairs say, look, this is the person we need to send to the Middle East, to represent Guyana, to make Guyana known in the Middle East? Why can't they remove that political barrier, get rid of that? It's so ancient to me. Anyway, Shamir, I want you to ask this question. Now, Guyana is an oil producing country. Do you think Guyana should join OPEC? If not now, when you think they should join?
I was being badgered almost daily and weekly by the Minister of Oil in Kuwait. Whilst I was in Kuwait, they offered to sponsor Guyana membership of the OPEC. I sent it in my report and there was no response. And of course, Kuwait was very disappointed, not even getting a response. You see, that's another style we have. Get a response, either yes or no. Nothing came. With what is happening in the Middle East, I will recommend yes. And there's a lot more I know that I cannot, public say on the TV, but from all I know, and I'm in touch with the royal families in Saudi Arabia, my first recommendation was the embassy with an ambassador in Riyadh. And hopefully that can also help to be an associate member without being a full membership of OPEC. But with the amount of oil we have, it will behoove Guyana interests to be in it. But I'm also an American. The Americans will not be too pleased. I also happen to suspect that. They will not like that, but Guyana has to decide what is important, national importance or political importance, because, in nations like the United States and the big countries, they don't have friends, they have interests, and interest today changes tomorrow. So Guyana leaders need to have a planning group, a group of elders to decide the pathway. But my recommendation is, and I suspect Minister Al-Jubair might have raised that in his meeting when he made that fit into Guyana, because that is on their mind.
I can say this because I've written on Middle East oil producing nations and so forth, a couple of articles on them. But I can say this to all and sundry and to those in power who are listening. If you join OPEC, and this is what they think, if you join OPEC and OPEC say you have to cut production, they will have to cut production. No. OPEC will make exemptions for underdeveloped countries.
Amen. Amen. Yes. Yes.
Not to cut their production.
Yes.
So if the government don't know this, you can join OPEC, but you don't have to go along with OPEC and cut your production. Right. They have the provision where they exempt the underdeveloped countries or new countries coming into OPEC. That's number one. Number two, OPEC offers a lot of resources to help in the oil industry.
Yes.
I've written about this. I've studied it. I've been to Dubai. I've been to these places. I've studied these things. So the government ought to know that, we wouldn't join OPEC because if they say to cut, we'll have to cut our production. And that would be no, you don't have to cut. When OPEC cuts production a couple of times before, Venezuela was exempted, Trinidad was exempted, and they're all members of OPEC. So Guyana, you don't have to cut your production if you join OPEC. But the services OPEC will offer you will be more beneficiary than what you're getting presently now.
Right.
This is what we know.
You are absolutely correct. 100% correct. 100% correct. And not only that, my second recommendation is an embassy with ambassador in Ethiopia, because that's the headquarters of the African Union. And many of the African nations, all nations, can have assistances that can be helpful to Guyana. Yes, my third recommendation is for Guyana to finally use a diplomatic corps, 50% career diplomats and 50% political appointees with experience in business, education, and science. Nations like the UK are finding that that works for them. And number 4, all past diplomats to be mentors to serving diplomats. So to enable fast track accomplishments, forget this party, assist each other. My 5th, land in Georgetown for a Kuwait embassy. Number 6, invite Saudi Arabia to establish their embassy in Guyana. Number 7, we have a loan that's mounting with Libya. The Libyan ambassador loved me and his brother, wanted accreditation, was prepared to see me. I could not get non-resident accreditation during my term. So I'll recommend as number 7, Guyana has a non-resident accreditation to Libya, so we can talk about a 43.51 million plus interest that's there.
We need engineers who are qualified in oil. We need engineers, we need accountants and so forth. OPEC could render all those services to us with ExxonMobil.
Amen. I mean, yes.
They have it, and they're willing to, they send it out to most of these underdeveloped countries. But people who are advising the government or who are wrong, they don't do their deep research to know these things.
Let me give you an empirical example. When I heard from Minister Winston Jordan that feasibility studies and their costs, I reached out to OPEC, spoke to him, broadly greeting, and I got the okay from OPEC to help Guyana in feasibility studies. OPEC, I asked them to join the Islamic Development Bank and make a trip and help Guyana with the feasibility studies. But see, I can engineer all these back channels, but if headquarters don't move the other move, nothing happens. When I check with OPEC what happened, they're still waiting on Guyana. I said, La la la, Muhammadur Rasulullah. Toba, toba, toba. What else do you do?
So, Professor Shamir, if you're to give a rating to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I'm not talking about the government here, what rating would you give to them in handling foreign policy as of today, compared to past and present?
A barely passing grade. Barely passing grade. Based on all the stuff I said, you know, the minister should know better. He is, you know, he should know better. Common sense tells you, you know, common sense tells you if you talk to some of the ambassadors who were served, they will tell you. You got Cedric Joseph is there. You got Dr. Rudy is still in Guyana. He's still alive. You have a team there. You got to reach out to them. It's there. Barely passing grade. Barely. I can't, you know, I am a very tough thing, but I give you the reason why I can't. I can't.
You know, I've asked for a former ambassador who has served the PP government to come on our program. I have several of them, and all refused. I know the current ambassadors, they're not allowed to speak. I know this, so I did not ask the current ambassadors. But former ambassadors were telling me that they're involved in this business and that business, and if they come on the program and say something that the government don't like, they will be victimized. I said, really? Seriously? I said, yes. So these are former ambassadors and high commissioners. I called several of them, and all refused to come on our program. Every one of them.
Sad. Sad.
I don't know where we're going with this type of,
all right.
You know,
Dr. Rose, if you don't mind, Ambassador, we are running out of time. We got a little bit of time, but based on what you told us tonight, and with Venezuela part of, you know, OPEC and he's meeting with the Arab world, do you think the Arab world can play a greater role in Guyana border controversy with Venezuela?
Yes. I said that, but nobody's listening. Nobody was listening. Yes. I show and tell. Yes. And Maduro is doing it himself and his team. He's present. He's there among the group. He's not missing anything. How they're doing it, I do not know. And with all due respect, we depending on all the rules, but in other parts of the world, it's not only rules and regulation, there are other forces are at work. And we all who are in leadership position have seen it. Wrong does not mean wrong. Wrong doesn't mean it's can not be right. So, and with all due respect, with all the case, from what I know, Guyana is in a sticky wicket.
Because I
It's
know,
not,
as you know, the matter is before the world court now, but Venezuela is saying that they will not honor the judgment of the world court. But if the Arab world can push Maduro to agree to that, then Guyana border controversy will be over.
Yeah, and we have missed that bus. I've sent my monthly report of talk. I gave up talking. They don't want to listen. I figured they had other plans. There's a difference between position power and personal power. That's part of our Guyana problem. Everybody got a position power, but this result, and believe you me, Venezuela is getting the edge in relationships. We're nowhere near, no way. Even in Kuwait, my brothers, they tell me, whatever it is, when push comes to shove, and don't forget, we talk about independence, but we know there's something called connections. They got Worcester, they got connection, and in international court, they have relationships in their countries. And if, things happen all over, decision makers have preferences there. So it's not as easy, with all due respect. They know they're doing their job, but from where I got my intelligence is what Venezuela is doing, Guyana is not matching in personal relationships with countries that matter, including where the judges are from. Plus. The power of OPEC, the power of the GCC. What more you want me to say? Even now the US is going to extend a hand in friendship for Venezuela to start to produce oil. They're in a sad way, but there'll be accommodation. So, geopolitically it's changing. The world is changing.
You have said quite a bit tonight, Ambassador. We want to thank you for your time.
Well, we still have some time.
I know we got time, but we got to wrap up soon, Dr. Rose. So I want to just quickly ask you a couple of questions.
Yeah. Ambassador, let me just come to some local politics. The AFC leader is saying that December, the court ends.
Dr. Rose, we're getting a feedback from your side, I think. There's a feedback. And like a machine sound in the back, like there's a...
No, there's no machine here.
Nothing
in the background. The window is open.
No.
Oh, the noise is gone.
No, the same.
Okay.
Same.
It's gone. So, Dr. Ali, what do you think that the AFC should leave the coalition? Because I know the leader is up Borbis almost every other weekend, trying to regain the AFC strength in Borby Region 6.
There was a national council meeting, and the national council of everybody voted by ballot for the accord to end in December. The AFC Management Committee and their other committees are reviewing it, and in due course, they'll make their final decision. But the highest decision-making body of the AFC made the decision to leave the coalition in December. Some of my friends in the PNC told me they would like the AFC to find out whether they still have all that strength and see what they really worth. So there are schools of thoughts on both ends. I do not think there's a final decision other than what the big majority move to the coalition will end. I read in the papers where APNU leader, Honorable Aubrey Norton, says that the agreement will last for 5 years. And so he was saying not 3 years. So I've never seen the agreement. I do not know what year, but the AFC did vote at the national meeting to depart the coalition at the end of December this year.
Okay, thanks.
Dr. Shamir, Professor, Ambassador, we want to thank you so much for being with our program tonight. You have given us a lot of information, and I really hope and pray that the President Ali, Vice President Jagdeo, Foreign Minister Todd, they would watch this program and listen to your concern and hopefully steer Guyana back into a state where we can work, as I said, a symbiotic relation. There's so much Guyana can offer to the Middle East. We talk about fresh water. You know, they're using the water from the sea, salinization. It's much more expensive. We can ship our fresh water to them. A tremendous opportunity. Fruits, vegetables, farm product, everything else we can ship their beef production and so on. So I hope that they listen to you, Professor Shamir, and hopefully call on you to work with them to get things better. Anything in closing? We're running out of time now.
Just a Guyanese, I have some great mentors in Guyana: Sir Donald Jackson, Raman Bacchus Gajraj, Lloyd, Lionel, Anina Laku, etc. I'm available to serve all of Guyana. Elections is over, and all Guyana should be. I'm ready, willing, and able to assist, and Guyana can do better, should do better, if they want to. The ball is in their court. And thank you for the opportunity to speak frank, free, and fair, without fear. I have no fear but Almighty. He gives and he takes. And my job is to communicate so you can correct failures. If you do not get this evaluation, I call it constructive evaluation, you can change course and even be better and surpass expectation. Maybe you missed something. And that's why the dialogue, and hopefully Guyana can use the elders in their midst, the past ambassadors in their midst in Guyana on site, irrespective of party. Bring them in for their skills and use them to have a better Guyana for all.
Thank you, Professor and Ambassador. Dr. Rose, anything in closing?
Yes, I have something to say. Folks, I'm from the quarantine, and my relatives and friends and family members are telling me since for the past 2 months, they have never seen so much power blackouts in that region in all their lifetime. It's happening 3-4 times a day. And when power goes, the water goes, everything goes with it. I'm asking GPL to correct that situation. Power blackouts is happening on the quarantine 3-4 times every day. People's equipment are being damaged. Fires are starting. Like the REO, they said his house burned down in Amsterdam. Before they said they had a spark or some blackout or something. People are suffering of the quarantine. They're suffering. Please end the blackout. Plus, I'm calling on the government to make it mandatory that all teachers, nurses, public service starting salary $150,000 a month starting salary. Or I will go with what Mr. Ramjatan says, give them $100,000 now plus what they're making. $100,000 more. Plus I'm calling on the government to put pressure on GT&T and all those internet connect companies. People are losing the internet 3-4 days in a week, but they still have to pay the full price. Because if they don't, the service will be cut off. It is unfair to the people. GT&T has to do better. It's about time we start calling these people out. I am not concerned who is upset, but GT&T cannot have it its way. People are losing internet 3-4 days per week and still have to pay the full price at the end of the month. So who gives GT that right to do this to Guyana? No, has to stop.
Thank you.
So those are my other things I want to make.
All right, thank you, Dr. Rose. And if I don't know if anyone watched 60 Minutes this last Sunday, yesterday, but there in Florida, after that huge hurricane, there was an area in Florida that had solar energy, underground piping, everything else, and they were not affected, no way, with the hurricane. And Guyana, after all these years, I mean, I've sent some investors to Vice President Jagdeo. They can have solar panel by this year end. Well, with supply shipping and so maybe like early next year. Blackout is over, it's history. But I don't know what the government plan is. You're sending proposals to them, but nothing is actually happening. They're saying that come, we will do it. You send investors, they have the money, they have everything to do it, and still nothing is done. I really don't know what else can we say. But we want to wish our countrymen all the best. God bless our great country. Again, Yomanabi greetings to all our Muslim family in Guyana and around the world. And until next time, God bless our great country of Guyana. Thank you.